Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 487, The Worldwide Kindness Campaign. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I will continue with the search for happiness. Here, I look at finding happiness. Well, for various people. People who are way too busy. People who have too much time on their hands. And also what this happiness could mean for our mental health and other things. Then it's on to the Worldwide Kindness Campaign. Although this is something I created in my mind and not some official campaign, it's still a good idea. Here I'll look at what happens when we are kinder to each other, how it might help with our knowledge, how it might help with us just doing day-to-day tasks, and perhaps could even spill over into bigger things such as government policy. Today's show will feature background footage from Wildcat Rock Trail. Wildcat Rock Trail is located in Girton, North Carolina. To get there from Asheville, North Carolina, take Highway 74A East. Go past Fairview. Then you'll go over Hickory Nut Gap, crossing into Henderson County. Maybe a couple miles after this, as you're going downhill, you'll see remnants of an old foundation of a house and chimney. Pull over here and park. Right above this old foundations, there's a trail. But this trail goes to Florence Nature Preserve. I went the other way, crossing the highway and going down along the edge of the orchard. That is the start of the Wildcat Rock Trail. The trail goes into the woods, crosses 3 streams, and then goes up the mountain on the other side. Eventually, you'll come up to a cliff, maybe 150 feet tall and 200 feet wide or bigger. If you keep going further, you'll come up to 3 more smaller cliffs, then eventually making it to Wildcat Rock. Well, I didn't make it to Wildcat Rock this time. Had to turn around, about the 3rd cliff or whatever. Perhaps I was only a quarter mile away or a third of a mile away. But the time ran out. I had to get back. It was going to get dark soon. But anyway, so now let's continue with the search for happiness. Whatever, you got lots of free time. So you have to break it into sections. Since you got so much free time, you could take some of that time, as I said, use it for fun time. Like I was talking before, visiting with friends where you don't have to talk about situations like work or family, where you can truly enjoy yourself. Or perhaps doing something by yourself you enjoy, like hiking or going to a concert, or getting a little vacation time in now and then. So you have to set some time just for fun, and it's important. It's the same guidelines as before with the super busy person. You probably need a minimum of 20 minutes a day, and hopefully maybe several blocks of 20 minutes or more to have fun. Well, if you have more free time, it might be easier to make time to have fun. But hold on here. Life isn't all fun, especially if you have oodles of free time. You need to figure out other things to do too, of course. So this might be either starting a new job or taking a class in something, or perhaps developing a new hobby or even a new skill, such as playing a musical instrument or other things. Perhaps even doing artwork, whatever. So you develop something new to fill up your time, and that way you won't get too bored. 4. As we move along, we realize that happiness is critical to our health, to our physical well-being. Having time for happiness reduces stress hormone levels, such as cortisol, and it probably helps in several other ways too with our health. So it's important to take that time for happiness and take that time to be by yourself and be able to think about whatever, to organize your thoughts, figure out what to do in the future, or deal with your emotions, think through perhaps recent traumatizing or upsetting events, or recent tough decisions you had to make. Did you make the right call? What happened if you decided to do the other thing? What are the consequences either way? What are the benefits either way? Yes, you should take time to weigh these things when making heavy decisions and when dealing with traumatic situations. You have to take time to evaluate the situation and your place in it and how you acted and so on and so on. Did you do the right thing? See, by doing this, by having this evaluation time, you could take time to correct things, so to speak, in 2 ways. See, with my autism, when I analyze something, often thinking there's only one way to think about it, often it breaks into 2 or 3 ways. Things get more complicated. When you evaluate a tough decision you made, well, you have to think in terms of, well, why did you do the decision you made? Did you really make the right choice? What factors contributed to your decision? And, well, if you made the wrong choice, by evaluating it and taking time to really think about it, perhaps next time you can make the right choice. Doing this and taking time to do this with most decisions, especially ones where you feel you might have made the wrong choice, by evaluating it, it helps you make the right choice in the future. And thus, by making more right choices, you'll be less disillusioned with the choices you made as you grow older. So it's important to take this time to evaluate the decisions you make. Also, there's the other side of it. It's the decisions obviously affect other people. So you have to think of how it works for them. And by adapting a pattern of making better decisions, it won't only work out for you, but it will work out for everyone involved. And then there's other aspects of happiness. You have to think about happiness and severe traumatizing, depressing events. I'm talking about things like the death of a loved one, someone near and dear to you, like your mother, or your brother, or your sister, or your partner, things like that. Well, when something like that happens, this really sets the stage for depression, and depression that could last for years, perhaps the rest of your life. Sometimes, well, the event is so traumatizing, the depression is kind of unavoidable. Other times, even when the trauma and depression is severe, sometimes you can take steps to mitigate it. Sure. Well, one of them is you should take a break for something fun. Hopefully, that will last, well, the longer the better. At least 4 to 6 hours, but perhaps several days would be more ideal. But take time to have fun after the depressing event. Try to do it within 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. Timing might be tight. Timing might be tight, especially if they're the type of person who's busy all the time. Well, you're probably even more busy after this depressing event, like losing a loved one. But taking the time to have fun, especially if you could do it for a few days on a wonderful vacation time, doing what you enjoy the most, could help you reset your brain chemically so your brain doesn't become hardwired to be depressed. By resetting it within a few weeks, you might be able to avoid a lifelong depression. The other way to deal with it, well, I guess equally as critical, is to evaluate it and to put things in perspective. This is hard with a severe loss, but in all situations, we have to somehow pick up the pieces and move on. And maybe there's something better out there, something or someone who could help us deal with our severe depression over our great loss. So we move along in life and we realize that happiness plays a critical role. And so we have to take time for this happiness. Whether we're super busy or we have too much free time, we got to make sure there's some time where we really enjoy ourselves. Because that's important. Sure, it'll help lift our mood and improve our attitudes and help us in many ways, from our mental health to our physical health. So we have to go on and continue with the search for happiness. Now it is time for the Worldwide Kindness Campaign. Well, I guess you haven't heard of it now, have you? Well, don't feel bad. It doesn't exist. It's all a figment of my imagination. But gee, doesn't it have a nice ring to it? The Worldwide Kindness Campaign. Sure. And, well, why even do it? Well, there's actually several good reasons to do it. So perhaps it really should exist. Everyone being kinder to each other. From family and friends, to strangers on the streets, to people from other countries and cultures, reaching out, trying to be kind, understanding, empathetic, and compassionate. So, that's what it would be. But let's look at why, and then we'll get into the more benefits of being kind. Why be kind to begin with? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Good reasons, sure. So here we go. We got the more secular reason to start with? Well, the secular reason has to do with wealth concentration. The problem with wealth concentration is, well, you guessed it, it could lead to disillusionment. Sure, as the prospects for a good job, for a career where you can earn a decent living and support your family and have enough to retire on and have enough even to leave to the next generation. A nice home in the suburbs. Well, that fantasy is crumbling for probably millions of people across the country and across the world. It seems like it's harder and harder to save money. Sure it is. Seems like we could barely get by, barely having enough money for the basic necessities, barely making it from paycheck to paycheck. Well, that's the goal of wealth concentration, obviously, is to have everybody in that situation. That way, the wealth is maximally concentrated. Then it's just a matter of, the corporate bosses to slug it out, buy each other out, and figure out who has the most money. Whether it's a bunch of corporation and corporate bosses, or perhaps just a few mega corporations that own everything. Well, that's for the ultra wealthy to decide. Never mind that. But the point is that this wealth concentration is occurring, and it's getting harder and harder to save money for more and more people, and harder to have a decent retirement, a nice home, be able to leave money to the next generation, and have money left over to enjoy yourself today. Can we really do all of that? Maybe not. We have to pick and choose. And we might not be able to choose even one of those goals. We might not ever leave money to the next generation. We'll probably, or we may not have enough money for retirement. We might not live in the decent home we wanted. Sure. And we might not have enough money to enjoy things in the present day because all our money is going towards essentials and not entertainment. Well, all of this creates disillusionment. And disillusionment could lead to unkindness and cruelty, as it's a dog-eat-dog world, as we compete for what limited resources there seems left, as we try to scam each other to get ahead. Is it worth it? I say no. No scamming. But some people are desperate enough, they will. It's really sad. This wealth concentration leading to disillusionment. Perhaps making us weaker. It just doesn't seem right. Perhaps it's some kind of evil plan of wealth concentration. Here's what I'm talking about. If you step back, well, perhaps there's some higher authority watching all this. As I talked about in previous episodes, the Casey Waters show, well, we could be living in an artificial reality. We could be a simulation where we're not real and reality is not real. We're just players in a game, or maybe not even players, just game pieces with someone else, something else, playing us. Perhaps just some sort of grand experiment where we are largely on our own and influenced by the people in charge of the game or the players. But perhaps the players let the game pieces, that is, us, loose on our own to see how we fare. Perhaps there's some wagers placed on us to do better or worse. Who knows? And perhaps some influence from the people in charge of the game, the players or whatever, or creators of the game, or both. Perhaps it's not a game. Perhaps reality is real. Okay, that's fine. Of course, there might be a God, obviously. And God is concerned about us. Does God want us happy or disillusioned? I say God wants us happy. And if there's a devil, well, the devil would want us disillusioned. And the devil would want us scamming each other and fighting with each other and being mean and cruel to each other. So the wealth concentration sets the stage for us to be disillusioned. So, as I said, it almost seems like it's part of an evil plan, somehow orchestrated by some metaphysical higher-ups. Anyway, so we have this wealth concentration going on, creating disillusionment. Okay, so that's one side of the equation. You got a good handle on it. That's the secular side. Now we're jumping over to the spiritual side. Well, we already talked about there being a God and God watching over us and all of that. And if God would want us to be kind to each other and happy or disillusioned. But I'm talking about your personal spiritual development. Sure. And when does it all happen, so to speak? When does the rubber hit the road? Well, it all happens in our lives, in our day-to-day actions with each other. God watching over us, or the players of the game if reality's not real, but whatever, someone, something watching over us, seeing how we progress and how disillusioned we are and how we treat each other. So, what I'm getting at is what happens at, quote, the end. That's when the rubber really hits the road. Sure, we make the road, we create our situation, our destiny by living our lives. And what we do, not only do we create our destiny of our life, but perhaps our destiny in the afterlife or the next life. Here's where I'm talking about. After we die, well, we make it to the brain room. Well, this is an artificial construct of mine, an idea of mine. Perhaps it's not real, but perhaps there's something similar. Anyway, you would negotiate with God using your accomplishments in your life and your failures to negotiate a fair solution, an appropriate solution for your next life. You can't get ahead. You can't borrow from karma, so to speak. You have to face it as it is with what you've done in your life. Then you negotiate with God to figure out what you deserve in the next existence based upon your past life, what you have done. It's, as I said, it's not something, well, you do have a say in it, but you can't cheat the system or get ahead. If God wants to punish you because you were mean in the last life, well, you're going to suffer one way or the other. You just have to choose your suffering. And I guess that's where the negotiation comes in. Do you suffer slightly your whole life? Or perhaps have happy portions of your life and suffer more acutely at other times? It's hard to say. So this would be all part of some sort of negotiation. If you were kinder in your life, God sees you more favorably, well, perhaps your next life is more pleasant, but perhaps not entirely pleasant. There's bound to be some suffering, some lessons to be learned, and you negotiate with God what the lessons might be, or perhaps how you learn them, when you learn them in your life, how it helps in your life. You and God are doing this together for your spiritual development, and together that's the goal, and you try to figure out with God the best path forward for your spiritual development in all situations, whether you led a lousy life where you were mean and cruel, and now perhaps you'll suffer in the next life.
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 @CaseyWaters.com.